Kristi Noem has been fired as Secretary of Homeland Security. She is the first cabinet secretary removed in Trump's second term. She defied a federal court order 3 times. A federal judge compared her agency's conduct to King George III. ICE recorded 32 deaths in detention in 2025, the most since 2004. A 5-year-old in a Spider-Man backpack was moved 1,300 miles from home 6 days before Congress was scheduled to visit. None of that got her fired. What got her fired was telling Congress that Trump personally approved her $220 million horseback television campaign. Trump called Republican senators that same night and said that was not his recollection. That is like a surgeon getting fired, not for the 3 malpractice suits, not for falsifying records, not for the patient outcomes, but for telling the hospital board the CEO signed off on the budget on the day before she was fired. Representative Jasmine Crockett, a former public defender and now the ranking Democrat on the House Judiciary Oversight Subcommittee, sat across from Noem at a congressional hearing and took her apart with the methodical patience of someone who has spent years presenting evidence to skeptical rooms. Crockett confronted her on 3 specific things: the 7-day advance notice policy for detention visits that multiple courts have ruled illegal, a measles outbreak at the Dilley detention facility that Noem's department reopened, and the case of a 5-year-old named Liam Ramos, detained, transferred 1,300 miles from his home in Minneapolis to Texas, and then moved out of the facility 6 days before Congress was scheduled to arrive. Before you watch the clip, here's what you need to know about the law Noem admitted to breaking. Watch for her answer on the 7-day notice, and watch for what she says about Liam.
Reuters, November 27, 2025, UC request. Officials criticized Biden vetting, but Afghan shooting suspect was granted asylum under Trump. And then September 29, 2025, Courthouse News, states sue DHS again over cuts to anti-terrorism grants for blue states.
Without objection, the gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. And Madam Secretary, you are almost to the end, so congratulations. I just have a couple of questions. Are you aware that the law that was written by this Congress makes it clear that members of Congress are allowed to, entitled to enter any detention?
Representative Crockett, I apologize. I have to run to vote in another committee, Secretary, and Mr. Schmidt will chair, and you will get extra 15 seconds, but I apologize for that.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much
Mr.
for your
Chairman.
testimony.
Appreciate it.
Are you aware that the law makes it clear that members of Congress are allowed to enter any detention facility at any point in time in which they choose to?
Yes, I'm aware of the visitation and oversight responsibility, and we work every day to try to accommodate members of Congress while taking into account the safety of those individuals that are being detained there.
Let me be clear. At any time, correct?
Yes, I understand there's litigation in this area.
No, that's not my question. I'm not asking you about litigation.
Yeah.
I'm asking you what the law is, because let me put it to you this way.
There's an appropriations rider that talks about
correct,
oversight.
and appropriations are law, because you are asking us to appropriate dollars right now for DHS, correct?
Correct.
And if we do that, you would take that as law, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that is what the law states, yet somehow, myself and another colleague, Congressman Castro, we ended up giving a 7-day notice to the Dilley detention facility because I had actually already gone to El Paso before. And when I went to that facility and I asked them why it was that they were requiring me to do something that specifically my branch of government had dictated was not required, they said it was because of you. They said you were the one that said that they were not allowed to allow us entry unless we gave a 7 days heads up. Is that true?
Yeah. The law specifically states oversight and visitations, and we are working to facilitate those, and we're at that time working to
did you give the instruction that members must give a 7 days heads up or not?
We had a policy in place that allowed us to get the staff.
Were you the one that ordered that policy?
I have a responsibility for ensuring everybody in that facility is going to be safe, and that I have adequate
no, but that's not my question, because the
conduct
problem,
a tour
let me tell you why we need to, reclaiming my time. The reason that I'm talking to you about this policy, and you're talking to me about safety, is because I did go into the Dilley detention facility. And let me tell you, they're not safe. This is why we need to conduct oversight, because your people continue. In fact, you have lost more lives in detention than anybody else. That is your record right now. So I don't expect that y'all are going to be the ones that are going to be best to keep them safe. This is why we are supposed to conduct oversight and not wait for you to give permission. In fact, after I left the Dilley facility, we were informed of a measles outbreak that was taking place in that facility. And another question I have, are you the one that ordered it to be reopened because that facility was closed under Joe Biden?
Those facilities were opened with the new administration. I'd have to look and
Okay, you're
see
part
if
of the
that
new
was-
administration. Were you the one that ordered it to be open is my question.
I would have to see when it was opened because I wasn't sworn in until 5 days after
Okay,
the
well, this
president
was,
was
it
in
was
office.
reopened in
So I
March.
would have to look at when.
It was reopened in March of last year.
Well, then I'm sure that that contract would have been renewed while I was secretary.
Speaking of contracts, as I have, actually, you know what? Let me continue on this line of y'all breaking the law. Are you familiar with a child by the name of Liam Ramos?
I am.
All right, so Liam was at this Dilley facility, and it just so happened that we had put in our 7 days notice, and y'all had grabbed him 6 days prior to our visit. So we were able to go and visit Liam. Are you aware of the court order that came down that released Liam from custody?
I am.
And are you aware that the judge said the case has its genesis in an ill-conceived and incompetently implemented government pursuit of daily deportation quotas, apparently even if it requires traumatizing children? This court and others regularly send undocumented people to prison and orders them deported, but do so by proper legal procedures. Are you aware of that?
Yes, and I would disagree with the judge on several
I'm
points
sure you would,
in
but can
there.
you tell me whether or not
That
you have a law
father-
degree?
Father chose to.
Can you tell me whether or not you have a law degree?
If I have what?
A law degree.
No, I do not have a law
Okay,
degree.
and you do understand, because I can go through a bunch of court cases and orders that I disagree with from the Supreme Court, that ultimately, that is the order of the court. That is what you follow, and if you have an issue, you appeal it up, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The court went on to say, apparent also is the government's ignorance of an American historical document called the Declaration of Independence. 33-year-old Thomas Jefferson enumerated grievances against a would-be authoritarian king over his nascent nation. Among others were, he has sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people. He has excited domestic insurrection among us, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. He has kept us among, in times of peace, standing armies without the consent of our legislatures. Are you aware that he wrote that? Do you know that he was writing about ICE that falls under you?
The judge?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. With that, I will yield, but I do have 2 UCs. The first UC is ICE training was slashed, records show corroborating whistleblower claims from the Washington Post on yesterday.
Without objection.
The second one is FEMA's response to Texas flood slowed by Noem's cost controls. This is out of CNN from July 10th of 2025.
Without objection.
Thank you so much.
What you just watched is a cabinet secretary confirming on the record a policy that multiple federal courts have already ruled illegal, and then defending it anyway. If something in that exchange felt like watching someone describe a law while breaking it in real time, that is exactly what happened. Here is the full picture, because each piece of what Crockett established is backed by court documents, federal data, and reporting from PBS, CNN, and CBS. First, the 7-day notice policy. And the law it violates, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2020, the law Congress passed to fund the government that year, contains explicit language stating that none of the funds given to DHS may be used to prevent a member of Congress from entering any facility used to hold immigrants for the purpose of conducting oversight. The law specifically states that nothing in it requires advance notice from a member of Congress before showing up. That is not an interpretation. That is the text of the funding law. When Noem admitted to having a 7-day advance notice policy in place, she was not describing a gray area. She was describing something courts have repeatedly ruled is flatly illegal. A federal court first blocked the policy in December. She brought it back through a hidden internal memo, an official government directive she never made public. This came to light only after multiple members of Congress were turned away from an ICE facility in Minnesota while holding a valid court order. They printed out the judge's ruling. They walked up to the door. They were turned away. As of this week, a federal judge has had to rule against this same policy for the 3rd time. According to House Judiciary Democrats, a George W. Bush appointed federal judge found that ICE violated court orders 210 times under her leadership. One judge wrote that ICE has likely violated more court orders in January 2026 alone than some federal agencies have violated in their entire existence. Second, Liam Ramos, and what moving a child 6 days before a congressional visit means. Liam Ramos was 5 years old. He and his father, Adrian, were detained in the Minneapolis suburb of Columbia Heights on the 20th of January and transferred to the Dilley Detention Facility in South Texas, 1,300 miles from home. They had a pending asylum case, no criminal record, no deportation order. No judge had formally ordered them to leave. A 5-year-old in a Spider-Man backpack and a bunny hat shipped to a detention facility in South Texas because the administration needed to hit its numbers. Crockett established at the hearing that Noem knew about Liam, knew about the court order, and knew Congress was coming. Liam was moved 6 days before the visit. United States District Judge Fred Beery did not hold back in his ruling ordering Liam's release. He condemned the detention as driven by what he called a dishonest hunger for unchecked power and wrote that the case originated in the poorly thought out and badly executed government pursuit of daily deportation quotas. He then did something federal judges almost never do. He included the now viral photograph of Liam at the end of his written opinion under his own signature, along with 2 Bible verses, including John 11:35, which reads simply, "Jesus wept." A federal judge printed a photograph of a crying toddler and quoted scripture in a legal ruling. That is how bad this was. Third, the deaths and the oversight that disappeared as they climbed. In 2025, ICE reported 32 deaths in detention, the most in any single year since 2004-07. People died in December 2025 alone. Senate Democrats described this in a formal letter as a clear byproduct of a policy focused on locking up as many immigrants as possible for extended periods, not just those with serious criminal histories. After the administration stopped paying its third-party medical providers in October 2025, the number of people being held surged 78%. ICE detention facility inspections dropped by over 36% in the same period. Fewer checks, more people, more deaths, and Congress was being told it needed to call ahead. There are people who died in ICE custody, whose deaths were initially ruled natural causes or suicide, only for independent autopsies to find evidence of homicide. When detainees who witnessed those deaths tried to come forward, DHS moved to deport them before they could testify. If that happened at a company, we would call it obstruction. Zooming out, what Noem's tenure at DHS produced is a documented sequence, a policy ruled illegal by courts, reinstated through secret memos 3 times. An oversight system gutted precisely as the population it was supposed to monitor surged. Deaths at a 2-decade high. A 5-year-old moved before an inspection. Witnesses to in-custody deaths deported before they could testify. And then she was fired, not for any of it. She was fired for saying Trump approved her television ad. Republican Senator Tom Tillis called her tenure a disaster. Speaker Mike Johnson was reportedly floating whether it was time for a change. A federal judge invoked the Declaration of Independence against her agency, writing that the Trump administration had displayed ignorance of Jefferson's grievances against a king who deployed swarms of officers to harass the people. She was called out by courts, by members of both parties, and by 2 separate congressional hearings on back-to-back days. None of it moved the needle. A phone call about a television commercial did. Here is the language to use when someone asks you what happened. Noem defied a federal court order blocking her illegal detention visit policy 3 times, issuing a secret memo each time. ICE recorded 32 detention deaths in 2025, the most since 2004. A 5-year-old with no deportation order was moved 1,300 miles and then quietly transferred 6 days before Congress arrived to check on him. A federal judge quoted the Bible and printed his photo in a legal ruling. Noem was fired the day after a congressional hearing. Not for any of this, but for telling Congress Trump approved her $220 million television. Trump said that was not his recollection. As of today, Noem has been fired and will be replaced by Senator Narquain Mullen effective the 31st of March. A federal court has ordered for the 3rd time that Congress may conduct unannounced oversight visits to ICE facilities. Liam Ramos is back home in Minneapolis. Representative Ilhan Omar's colleague personally escorted him and his father from Dilley to the airport. His immigration case remains unresolved. He is one of at least 4 children from his school district detained by ICE in a single month. The policies that produced all of this remain in place. Remember the surgeon from the top 3 malpractice suits, falsified records, documented patient harm, fired for telling the board the CEO signed the budget. The CEO called the board members that night, said he didn't recall signing anything. The surgeon was gone by morning. Noem defied court orders 3 times. A judge compared her agency to King George. Children were moved before inspections. Witnesses were deported before they could testify. Deaths hit a 20-year high. She spent $220 million of taxpayer money on a television campaign starring herself on horseback. She got fired for the last sentence of that paragraph, specifically for saying who approved it. Liam Ramos is home. The system that detained him is not. The person who ran it is now special envoy for the Shield of the Americas, a title that did not exist before the day she was shown the door. The policies are still running. The secret memos are still in the files. The 73,000 people in ICE detention as of January 2026 are still there. She is gone. The question worth sitting with is not what she did. It is what gets to stay after she leaves. If this breakdown helped you understand what actually happened, hit like so more people see it. Comment below. I read everyone. Share this with someone who needs the full picture. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.